We came to Taiwan, a small family of 3, about 30 years ago. Taiwanese and expats lived very, very separate lives at that time. Being Indian and brown-skinned, without the Chinese-speaking skills, we did encounter some prejudice. And thankfully, 30 years later, we're still here, we're thriving, we're doing stuff and sharing our story with many others. I have experienced a deep sense of supportive communities since I've been a child and even in my adult life, and so I actively seek it, I nourish it, I contribute to it, I use it. And Red Room has been one such community in the last 9 years. And each person brings their own flavor, their own brand of energy to power up the experience, just like the story of Stone Soup. I became a self-proclaimed name, the keeper of the faith. Basically, it means I'm the protector of the initial philosophies and intentions that the Red Room started with, to create a safe space for people to shed their persona of the outside world and just get real with each other. Life became a canvas of colors, textures, patterns, a flow emerged, and it allowed me to become one of the ingredients in the stone soup of life in Taiwan.
Where I was made by a businessman and a visual artist, socially active, culturally curious, and the 4th member of the Mehta family in Taiwan, I was put into the local education system for the first 12 years of my life. So I grew up feeling and looking very different. I sunk into the lows when I felt unaccepted, but I also danced through the highs when my difference was celebrated. At 17, I graduated high school, seeking my place locally, without the resources to school abroad, and that's when adulthood does what it does best. It was flowering into this ever-expanding weight of responsibility, accountability, and a need for a plan. And so that brings me to a very, very magical evening. I came home one night to find my sister chatting with 3 of her friends, and they were guzzling down alcoholic grape juice, trying to tackle big world problems. And the one they were addressing was the sheer lack of collaboration between foreign and the local peoples of Taiwan when it came to the arts and culture. And the criteria for the solutions they were exploring always involved having a platform or a way for voices to be heard, and also utilizing the essential and instrumental aid that red wine provides to get words to flow. And so I made a joke. I said, why don't you call it Stage Time and Wine? They took that joke very seriously. It was the first of many open mic events to come, and it was held in a warm and intimate venue we called the Red Room. So for the first event, we invited our friends, our family. Each of them had to bring a +1, some food and some drink to share. And we ended up with a room bustling with 120 people and even more bottles of wine. So at that time, it was clear that this would become my safe space, and it became my home. And over time, my role within the community evolved, and I was at an all-time high of celebrating differences. And I became the host of Stage Time and Wine. Now today, the Red Room is hosting a variety of gatherings with the help of the Red Room staff and volunteers in music and visual art, workshops and drama and festivities. But we're always trying to highlight the importance of human interaction in such a fast-paced digital age. And so I know I was raised and nurtured in a village full of flavor. And as I learned the do's and don'ts of curation and the management of community activities, I remember how distant and alone I felt, as a foreigner in Taiwan. But ironically today, my job is to bring everyone together, regardless of cultural and linguistic differences, and we celebrate everyone's experience and we celebrate everyone's identity individually. So with life bubbling at high heat, I'd like to say to you all that life is like a pot of soup. With this premise, my mother and I are joined to share what we believe to be the 4 essential ingredients to help a mover and shaker flow, sustain, and to keep that pot cooking.
When we started this journey, it was a manifestation of a conscious need to create a space where we could listen and be heard. In other words, a place where we could be open and vulnerable.
Foreigners in Taiwan, or foreigners born in Taiwan, would have to leave by the age of 20. That was the extent of our privilege. And so I was coming of that age soon, and there was a growing responsibility for myself and my family. And I feared that I would have to leave, and I would have to discontinue my work at the Red Room. When my situation came to the attention of certain Red Roomers, they actually stirred a movement and changed the law so that people in similar situations, such as myself, could stay. And so after years of difficulty and compromise, I attained a legal status for residency, work, and more importantly, I got a peace of mind. But I want to share another story of vulnerability with you. It involves one of our favorite Red Roomers. I like to call him the Suntory street side lyricist. So he had traveled across all 50 states in the US before he was 18 years old. He had lost all of his belongings 5 times or more for one reason or another. He had to rely purely on his memory to express who he was and is. And each time he would step up under the Stage Time and Wine spotlight, he would get comfortable on the stool, and when he closed his eyes, the entire room would inch forward with anticipation and intrigue. And he would take his finger and slide from his temple down to his cheek as if he was scrolling through a database of texts to find the right file. And once he had chosen his story in his own spoken word rhythm, he would keep the entire room engaged in one of his tales. See, he had to adapt and overcome these challenging times. And it taught me that it's not a passive but active state of vulnerability that enables us to thrive. Because imagine how tantalizing the flavors could be if we open ourselves to something a little more, so that others and other things can contribute to season this heartwarming soup. So I say, take off the iron lid, because vulnerability comes from having the courage to accept things. So we let cool cucumbers and hot potatoes all bubble in the mix.
We are, each of us, a part of a whole, a part of a community, maybe more than one. For us today, right here, we are all gathered in this room. You came, you listened, we shared. We made this gathering possible. We are a whole. Sorry. In your own life, your whole could be your family, a golfing group, a charity cause, your workplace, whatever it may be. Take a moment to think about which whole are you a part of. Keep that thought in your head for a minute, and if you could indulge me, we could do a little activity about that. So with the intention to listen and share, turn to a person who's sitting next to you. Take a moment and just keep that thought in mind of the whole, and turn to the person next to you and share, take turns to share and listen what your whole is and what value you see that whole brings to you, to your life. I'll give you a few seconds to try that. So now, again with the intention to share and listen with each other, taking turns, think of one thing that each of you can contribute to that whole that you find value in. Just one thing that you could contribute to make that whole greater. Are we good? So, you are now the keeper of someone's intention, as well as your own. It's a very important thing to hold someone's intention like that. And it follows that the answers that you have come up with will guide you to that place where the whole becomes greater than the sum of its parts.
So as a young adult, it was very hard to get me to read. But it became a treat being in a room full of people, and so I could practice listening. See, at Stage Time and Wine, people would share their plans, their aspirations, their dreams, their agendas, their failures. And this was a shared platform offered to everyone for them to express themselves so our ideas could dissolve into one another, mix and match, and make something new. It sounds wonderful in principle, but as the master of ceremonies, it could be a total nightmare. And there were sheer moments of embarrassment. See, as the MC, my job was to maintain the positive vibes, keep things compassionate, and we would have to listen with intention. But when listening became an obligation, it was a real challenge because there was no way to disassociate myself from what they were sharing, the content they had chosen, the form of expression. And I think overall what I learned was that how we see things develops the more we share of ourselves. It's how others learn and interact. See, something's brewing, and the roots begin to tangle, and the flavors have soaked, and soon it'll be time to stir.
Stone soup is an old folk story in which hungry travelers arrive at a village looking for food. The villagers do not want to share their food. So the travelers find some stones, put them in a pot, add water, and start making their stone soup. Now, the villagers got very curious, and the hungry travelers convinced them that the deliciousness of that soup could only be enhanced by certain ingredients. So, very excited, they went back and brought a carrot, a potato, some seasoning, and other things to add to the soup until they had a beautiful, big pot of nutritious soup for everyone to share. And that's pretty much what we do at Red Room as well, where many people contribute gifts and their talents and their gifts to make something for everyone to share. Each one has its own flavor, its own character, but somehow it all comes together and diffuses, and we can taste the whole. So one of our art workshops is called Visual Dialogues, where it's a silent conversation between groups of two people that take turns in having a conversation with only paper and paint. Then there's a moment of reflection where people seek their inner guidance, and the third step is where they come together to co-create as a group. So these kind of workshops and exercises often end up with many challenges, but somehow it all comes together and harmonizes at some point.
So many at Stage Time and Wine were poets, storytellers, but more often than not, we encountered musicians. They had something inside of them. They wanted to connect with the rest of the room on a more physical level. They were flowing. And so for more of the melodic players, like singers or guitar players, I always had a selfish urge or intention to get involved with their stage time. And so finally I realized I could perhaps even add rhythm. And so I decided to buy a drum. I bought a cajon, something I could sit on, something I could add the rhythm, but more importantly, we could ground the room and sound our heartbeat. So we would get the whole room together, and now we were playing as a whole, in sync. Most of us. There's always someone clapping off beat. But even those individuals taking action is just as important. It's healthy. And so I chose to add rhythm. I took action. And I'm here now stirring the pot. So be ready to take your turn.
So team efforts can have lots of challenges, as we know, with gaps in understanding and flow. We could look at it like a crack in a beautifully crafted piece of pottery. Personally, I love cracks because for me, it's a chance for the universe to shine through and create magic beyond our imagination. Or we could look at it as create a finer work of art and take it to the next level, as in the Japanese tradition of kintsugi, when we could wear it with pride as a warrior monk. But is that what the group needs? Is that what we all want as a group? I think that is a question that is yours to ask. Sadhguru, a mystic from India, said, "You have never experienced anything outside yourself. The source of your experience is within you." Group conversations where deep listening is practiced can allow things to go in many different ways. Letting go of my way or the highway is hard, but sometimes necessary for the greater good of the group. It allows for growth because we are breaking self-imposed limitations and allowing and accepting another's ideas. Feeling connected allows the group trust. And listening allows us that trust to listen to our inner guide. Red Room has occupied our minds and our lives and our families. It has given us joy, it has given us heartache, it has given us headaches as well. Inspiration, disillusionment. We have hugged, we have cried, we have laughed, and we have sighed. But never once have we lost, never once have we stopped loving the red in the room, which is the essence, the spirit that guides us and pulls us forward in that motion where we know that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
See, today Taipei is flourishing with experimental incubators, art gallery, exhibitions, and different events, visual arts and music alike. 9 years ago, there was a need for this exchange, and today, what we see is evidence of the ripples made then. So we are living in the very environment we hoped for, and this is an ecosystem feeding off of diverse exchange. See, life is like a pot of soup, hot water in need of seasoning, some spices, and ingredients that either complement or contradict one another. But it won't get anywhere without a spoon to keep them from congealing or a ladle to keep the vegetables from burning. So to us, stir the pot is a call to action. There's a need for engagement in such an international climate. Proactiveness is essential for us all to thrive. So we believe in putting our heads and hearts together to multiply our potential to affect change. Are you ready to stir the pot? Thank you.
Thank you, Roma and Manav.